Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of My Faith with Homer and Pip. Homer?
Everyone knows I love to start with Mother Teresa, but this was heard first on My Faith. What someone should say to every person every day, the rest of their life: the world is a better place with you a part of it. And if Mother Teresa had heard it, I know she would have said it. She certainly lived it.
I'm trying to say the same thing. Had an interesting experience, God being everywhere. Went to have some car service done at the dealership just yesterday, and a very friendly woman at the desk. You pay, et cetera. This world would be a better place if I just want to say an Our Father outside the dealership. I said, well, I'll join you. Sure enough, she said an Our Father. I wish we could get everyone in the world. Well, as we know, two or more are gathered, the good Lord here. So that was a really neat experience. Our guest today on My Faith with Homer and Pip is Dan McLaughlin. He's a dear friend and a brother in Christ. He said a lot of Hail Marys, Our Fathers in his life. He has a wonderful spiritual journey to share that we believe will bless you to and through the cross of Christ. So, with our gratitude, as always, we kick it off with a man who, with the Holy Spirit, came up with this idea. Homer?
And the only thing I never know is, how is it going to start? My fascination with whoever it is, how did they choose to start My Faith? Take it away, Dan.
Oh, thank you, Homer. Thank you, Tom. It's an honor to be on this. And to be honest, if you probably asked me 2 years ago if I'd be doing something like this, I would be like, no way. So it's funny you say everything has a start, and it does. But I think the biggest thing, and I've learned through the time here, is that faith is a journey. Life's a journey also. But you need those seeds have to be planted early, or somewhere along the way, and by the right people. And I was blessed in the beginning. My grandparents, my mom and dad instilled those seeds. And I'm a guy that kind of actually, I look at behaviors. Talk is one thing, but actions speak way louder than words. So as I was thinking about this, it's funny. It's like, when did it really start? I'll say, hey, I remember my grandmothers, both of them. So my folks are from Ireland. So there's definitely a faith there in itself. Going to church, kneeling down, teaching you your prayers. I remember us saying the rosary as a family. My mom and dad bringing the statue of Mary in during Lent, that we'd have all the neighbors over. I remember my mom and dad having missionaries and both priests and nuns coming to the house and talking to us. They were really entertaining them, but it's just these subtle things that I go back in my memory. And I looked at some of the videos. So I kind of knew what some of the first question was going to be is, how did it all start? Then life comes in and you have all these memories, and there's certain triggers that start bringing those memories and thoughts, and more importantly, those behaviors together. There's still times now I can sit back and say, hey, I remember what that nun or that priest or someone in my family did that helped instill the faith that I have. It's my faith ain't perfect, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, hey, this guy here, from the get-go has been on a faith journey. I have my struggles like everybody else. I do. I'm like everybody else, but at a certain point in time, I did get a call, and I've been called many, many times before that. I probably never answered. I would sit there and say, that's probably something really good to do, but I'd have something else that was going on in my life. You get a family, you get a wife, you get kids, you got a job, you got a career. I could go through all these things, and I'll call them distractions. They distract you from doing what really you need to do, as opposed to interruptions. And I think that's the difference between, so to tell you something, the goofy dog wants to go out. Can we just stop?
No, I want to interrupt you.
Okay.
You said we had all the neighbors over? What? I
Well,
wrote
I don't,
down,
you
had
know, I grew up
all
in
the
Chicago.
neighbors over? What?
I grew up in Chicago, so I was going to do it in my office, but I had a big Sox pennant behind me, and I don't know if you like some Blackhawk stuff. So, anyways, yeah. So with the neighborhoods, you knew your neighborhood by what parish you were in. I don't know how Milwaukee was. Were you guys? I know Tom grew up out east, but I mean, yeah. Hey, I grew up in St. Mary's, and you grew up in St. Nick's, and then they were very, based on ethnicity. So a lot of Irish people were in our community. So, and community church was a community. So they would put out and say, hey, the Blessed Virgin statue is going to be at the McLaughlin house this week. So Monday through Friday, come over at whatever time, 6:00, and people would come. You'd have a packed house that would be there. So it was, yeah, I mean, something that you definitely remember. My dad made an effort of always saying the rosary too. I mean, sometimes it was comical. It would be like a Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, we'd be all kneeling at different places, on the plastic furniture, and inevitably we were all 2 years apart. Someone was screwing around, and you'd hear him, Our Father, and he'd be coming over on his knees and give someone a little reminder that, hey, we're praying now, so stick with it. But they're just little things like that they resonate with you, and they plant the seed. Ironically, I found a book from my grandmother in Ireland, dated April 1963. Okay. And behind me, I got my little, I'll say, prayer thing here. Why I found this book, how I got this book after 60 some years is a miracle, which it has all the prayers of an Irish mother in it. How could you throw that book away? So, yeah, so it just started, and I mean, I was an altar boy, and I mean, a lot of us were all on the same journey. That's kind of where I look at a lot of my buddies, and I don't know.
Well, they're all at the same journey at the beginning, but
Yeah,
every journey's different when you decided that it was your faith. It's not your parents or whatever the family is.
yeah.
Then one day you have to say, I buy it, and go from there.
I knew it was my faith, right? Even in high school. I mean, I think it's what you're taught in the beginning. You have to have your faith. You need some fundamental things. You need virtue, and you need some knowledge. Okay. Virtue is going to give you the values, your desires, your priorities, knowing what's right and wrong. And I think that's a big thing when parents teach their kids is, I'm not going to be there in every situation, but if I can instill in them the moral fiber that they know what to do and make the right decision. We don't always make the right decision. I can't tell you I did make the right decision. Thank God the consequences were never terrible. But I think that is the starting point. And then knowledge. Knowledge is powerful. It's just when you look at everything over time, the more you get exposed to things, the more questions you have, the more answers you seek. And I'll be honest, Homer and Tom, I'm way smarter now than I was. I took 12 years of college Catholic education. I mean, grammar school, high school, college. What I've been opened up to probably over the last 4 or 5 years has enlightened me tremendously. I mean, I'd be questioning why anybody would question the faith. I mean, you got a guy who comes onto the earth. Hey, he gets these other 12 guys. He's like, hey, follow me. I got this thing. You spin ahead history, and now he's got people that are actually dying for him. Okay. So I don't know about any of you guys, but I wouldn't be lining up to say, hey, I just met this guy and get in line with these guys. I think I'm going to give my life up for him. Like, what? It's kind of remarkable when you go through time and then how the churches were founded and schools. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to go up against 2,000 years worth of history, and none of it's really been refuted, right? I mean, they document that all this stuff kind of happened. So when I look at it, I start becoming more inquisitive. So, I mean, the big point, my wife got diagnosed with cancer. That's the point, Homer. That's when the rubber meets the road.
Well, but it meets people differently. Were you mad? Did it make you stronger? How did he give you peace? I probably have 20 questions, but
Yeah,
start wherever you want.
I wasn't angry. I mean, I think it was like, how could this happen to us? Why? Like, I don't get it. I mean, hey, we had we were blessed. We had world by the tail. We were going to do things and finish up putting your kids through college. It's like, hey, this happens to other people. This didn't happen to us. And I probably was angry more at the doctors in the beginning, just because she had gone to so many different ones and no one could diagnose it. And then evidently we find out that ovarian cancer is very hard to diagnose. So, but what I realized is like, hey, life goes on. It doesn't stop. Being angry wasn't gonna help the situation at all. And at just that point in time, you're like, hey, God, you can't rewind thing. You can't call a timeout so I could, hey, we got a new play we got to come up with. It's like, hey, you got to go. And when you're the guy on the outside looking in, you got to pray. So you kind of go back. I'm going to call to your fundamentals. And I'll tell you what, like probably everybody else, the only time I used to pray maybe is when I needed something. And be like, hey, God, I know I'm going to church and stuff, but hey, man, I got a big one now. I really, really need something help today. And ironically, a few times he did answer. I mean, the day my wife got diagnosed, right? So our regular GP, the doctor, her screen is lighting up. Okay. Buddy of mine calls me, and just coincidentally, I have to tell him about this, but he's involved with different things down at Freighter, and we were going to get treated through a different system. And the doctor's like, hey, I think you should go look at Freighter. They got a cancer center and all this stuff. And I call him. He's like, hey, I'm at Freighter. I can help you. My wife's like, hey, you got to run with this. I'm overwhelmed. So we get in a point where we go in, and I'll just say my one grandma, both of them are very divine, but she would just show up in weird type of places. I remember in my back room, I said, oh, Roddy, that's what I call her. We need a miracle. Like, oh God, send us a sign. We go meet this doctor, meet with her for 3 hours, and her PA. Her PA's assistant's last name is Neary. My mom's maiden name is Neary. My wife goes, hey, did you catch Jamie's last name? I go, did I catch it? I go, let me tell you what I did yesterday. So that was the start to say, hey, I mean, I always knew there was a God, but I was like, hey man, I really need help. It stepped up and started to present itself. But I kind of watched my wife. I mean, there's just a lot that goes on when, we all know our life's time's finite, but we all take it for granted till someone comes into the room and says, hey, your life, the average person only lasts 5 years. You don't forget that comment. She lasted 5 years and 1 month, ironically. Well, we never, ever gave up. I mean, we never talked about it. And as weird as it's going to sound is I know what happened to us. I think at the end of the day, it happened for us, for me. I tell my sons that. I'm hoping they catch the fever that maybe I got, and others do too. But I firmly believe my wife's in heaven. She worked at St. Anthony's for 25. I go back and just put the pieces together. I mean, I watched her be silent. Just the little things that she did that I pick up on it. I mean, I got a Jesus Calling book over here. Just little things that we used to do, and how something small turns into something big, and now you start taking things for granted. Things that were, I'll say, maybe difficult to do, because you thought they become part of your routine, and you make time for them. So I got the dog bark. Can you hear him?
I don't know what we do now. It barked before. It's barking now. This is.
Oh, he's 10 times. He usually lays on the chair, but hey, I'm gonna move. I'll get him in here. Oh, that's great.
It's life, as Dan said.
He's right.
We're free flowing here, right, Homer?
No, I think when Brent puts it together, he'll start adding who let the dog out.
Yeah.
I think he can. This
Well, the good news, he was barking because he was wrapped around a tree, which he never does either. So
this could be one of a kind.
this is my wife.
Dan,
This is
I
my
wanted to
wife
ask you
saying,
because
"Hey, this is
it's
my wife
called
saying,
My
hey, I
Faith.
can't believe you're doing this. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
make this as funny as possible because you're gonna people are gonna laugh." So anyway, so
Well, no, I thought this is my faith, but another way to me is a person's what's your relationship with God? And you've told us some of it. I'm just assuming it has changed dramatically, and the
oh yeah,
sadness of dealing with your wife created a relationship. Tell us about it.
yeah. I mean, I think without God, I wouldn't have got through this. There's just no doubt about it. I remember saying to the person that actually did the service, it was about 6 months later, and you probably don't know what behaviors and things people watch you and you think you're probably fine, but you're really not fine. And she's like, "How are you doing?" I go, "What? You keep calling me." She's like, because she goes, "You're better now." She goes, "You weren't good before." And I said, "How do people get through things like this that don't have faith?" And she said, "Dan, they don't." And I think that's the comment that kind of resonated with me. And what I started to do from there, I think I started to realize that God calls you. He never asked for volunteers. Okay. And that's what I was doing before. I'd sit there and say, "Oh, okay, I'm discerning. It's whatever renewal weekend at the church. Oh, I should do X, Y, and Z." And to be honest, anytime I did something, my wife probably pulled me along to do it. But after she passed, I said, I I'm on a roll here. I got something here. Someone did ask me. I'm going to be honest with you. They asked me to be on stewardship, which probably was a turning point. I wouldn't say my initial response was enthusiastic. Far from it. And then you go through discernment. I'll be honest, I wasn't sure what discernment was. So, but once I started answering the call and being more open to it, I could see God coming more and more into my life. I mean, just running into Tom and these guys at Queen of Apostles, I was just going over there because it was convenient. And this Pat asked me to come into Bible study one day, and the old Dan would have said, "No, I'm an introvert. I don't want to do that." And now I'm like, I love going. I mean, I look forward to Tuesdays and, sitting around and talking, and, we have laughs. Last night, I mean, I don't even belong to that parish, but it's just, I'm more open to invitation, and I see God working more in my life. I mean, me doing this interview with you guys, what are the odds of me and Tom Pippin's crossing paths and him asking me to do something? Even our past, even weird when you did the interview with Molly Cruz. I never thought it would come out to that, but Tom was doing something with Molly. Molly talked to me, and next thing you know, you got Molly on there. And I love Molly. I love Cameron and Pito. I mean, they've helped me
So
with my faith.
you said 2 years ago, no way you're doing this. Why not?
Oh no.
Why not?
You know what? I think part of it was faith was something you kind of kept to yourself. I was like, "Hey, that's my thing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to kind of keep it kind of private." And then when you figure out, "Hey, I'm a disciple. And then if I move from discipleship, I got to move into evangelization. I need to start kind of talking about it." So that and be out actions. Remember earlier in my thing, I said, "Hey, I'm all about behaviors and actions." When I work, I have people like, "Hey, so you're going to do X. What does that look like? If I walked into someplace, how could I touch that? How could I feel it? What would people be doing?" And that's the way I kind of look at where I'm at now. Is it was my time to say, "Hey, everything you asked everybody else to do, what are your behaviors?" And there's certain things you should do in private. I think prayer, to begin with, prayer is communication. I mean, to have a relationship with God, the first thing you got to do is, with anybody, you have to have the ability to communicate. So that's the starting point. And I think people, like, I just maybe use myself as an example. I'll say I represent a lot of people. Sometimes they just struggle. It's okay to start with the regular structured prayer. I mean, if that's what you know, that's what you know. You started and you opened up that line of communication. Then I think you kind of evolve. You know, instead of going from asking for things, I switched it. I'm more grateful for things. I'm more thankful. Then you evolve. I've got better, you know, what are your desires? You know, and then listen. Give God time to listen. One thing I learned from my wife, and to this day, my house is pretty silent. I mean, you wouldn't know that by the 2 times with the dog here. But silence allows your brain to think. It helps your mind, your body, and your soul. And then the other thing is, I mark things down. I mean, I mark, as goofy as it is, I put on my little calendar that I went to church or I went to and that helped me in the beginning, kind of hold myself accountable to what my commitments were. And then the last 2 are pretty easy. Just make yourself available. You can pray anytime you want. I mean, you be walking the dog, instead of listening to radio, I'd be like, you know, I'm going to just turn this off for a minute. I got to get my head together. And when all else fails, just keep showing up. I mean, if you keep showing up, sooner or later, something good is going to happen. And I'm not perfect. However, I'm a sinner. I always say to people, I go, hey, I'm a sinner and Jesus loves sinners. That's me. But hey.
All right, Tommy, I want you to get into this. Come on, take it away.
Well, Dan, I was just so impressed. It seemed as if after your beautiful wife died, and you know she's with Jesus, more alive than ever, and praying for you, instead of cowering in a corner, you just stepped it up like a team behind by 20 in the fourth, and they're not giving up until they cross the goal line enough times to get the victory. Where did that strength come from? I know it's your faith, but again, there has to be a resolve there. And I'm asking on behalf of those of us who maybe don't have that inner fortitude, don't have that strength on a purely human level to go with faith.
I think it starts with my family. I mean, my family supported me a lot. Okay, they did. They made sure I was never alone. They gave me a lot of support. And I'll go back to that beginning. A lot of that was wrapped up in prayer. I mean, you know, my sister works at a church. My mom and dad go to church daily, or did. My dad passed now. So my other siblings, they stuck together. They were with me. The big part, though, that really came, that got me out of the shell, though, Thomas, someone asked me, actually, someone volunteered me for the stewardship committee at St. Anthony's. That probably was a turning point. That was the part where, you know, it's like, hey, you know, Jesus did, he asked, he called you. And at that point in time, I'll say that was the crux where I said, hey, I got to come out of my shell and I got to start to give. I started actually going to grief groups too, to be honest. I went to one. It was back to the person that helped me with the funeral. She invited me to one. And then actually I started going back to 2 or 3, and I'm involved with another one now, just to give back and help other people. But I think that calling at St. Anthony's, when they asked me to join the stewardship thing, and I thought I didn't have any talent. I mean, my discernment speech, I said I was the guy sitting in the pew that's been listening for a long time, and I've done some stuff, but hey, I got talents and I got a lot more to give. I don't know what they were at the time, but I knew it was time to get challenged, that it was time that I should see what I do have to offer. I mean, I'm sitting here today talking to you. I did a witness talk. I mean, just things I wouldn't do. And I think, I guess where I'm walking it, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, don't wait till you, like myself, and you get a punch in the head that says, hey, wake up. I've been calling you for a long time. Like, I gave you a lot of good graces at the beginning of your life. Like, don't forget about those things, and the good thing about God is, see how I remembered all those little things, from my having a rosary being said, to the comical moments of the rosary being said as a family, to, the nuns at school, to, watching my dad, say the rosary, going back and forth to work. I mean, God, he worked construction. I mean, he built buildings in Chicago. I mean, he's not exactly hanging out with a whole bunch of guys. And he would walk into a room and they kind of knew where he lay. I mean, they definitely did. I mean, so and he gets strength from that, I mean, his words were like, hey, actions speak louder than words. And I kind of always resonated with that. And to your point, in the journey, we all get called at a certain point in time to step it up. And I don't know if God keeps calling all the time, or does he at some point in time say, hey, I've been calling you for a long time. But I'm kind of in the camp is I think if you keep your eyes and ears open, you'll see a lot. How's that? And you'll answer the call.
Mm-hmm. It seems as if your love for the Lord and receiving his love have gone deeper.
Oh yeah.
You want to tell?
Yeah. It's evolved over time. I mean, in the beginning, I'll just say with my wife, I'm doing, it's funny, I got the Mother Teresa book over there, the Essentials, and with her devotions and Jesus Calling. Ironically, two things that my wife gave me and passed along. And I'll just say, saying some standard prayers, sitting at my desk wherever I might be traveling to, and maybe ending the night with the rosary. And again, as long as you start opening up your eyes and your ears, you get fed a little bit more, and you get a little bit more. And cutting a lawn, maybe I would not listen to anything. Normally, maybe I'm listening to Bob Euchre on the radio, and maybe I'm going to listen to relevant radio. I'm going to listen to a mass. Maybe I ain't going to listen to nothing. Driving 2 hours to go see my folks in Chicago, I turn off the radio for 15 minutes and I watch what my dad did, and he prayed the rosary for 15. And all of a sudden these little things, they become habits. And then, like a couple of years ago, I'm like, oh, I think I'll go to daily mass once a week. Now I'm like, I like going. I mean, I get it. I wish people could see the community that's at that daily mass, not just, Queen of Apostles. I seen it at St. Anne. That's a community. And that's the part, I think, when the light bulb goes on, you're like, man, I get it now. I get it. I answer more calls now, like adoration. I'll tell you, was something I thought I should do. And now I've been doing it. They made it convenient. Someone said, hey, why don't you do this? We got a sign up table. Come do it. So I'm open. My eyes and ears are open. And the more you get, the more you want to participate. Knowledge is powerful. I mean, I'll go back to that. You got virtue, you got knowledge. Once you get knowledge, now you got some self-control. And I think the self-control and the discipline are, hey, now I carve out time to do for prayer. I in the morning, that's my thing. I'll sit down, have a cup of coffee, and I sit at my kitchen table. And that's why I kind of did this interview with you guys. This is where I do my work. I mean, behind me is all my little books and statue and, holy water. I mean, it's there for a reason. It's convenient. I can grab it. And more importantly, when people walk into my house, they can see it. I want them to see that. Again, it's just the behavior that's demonstrated. So, yeah, I got lost there. I don't know.
No,
it's evolving. I mean, yeah.
Good. You're all good. I think we get it. Thank you. It was beautifully expressed. You have sons or son?
Yeah, I got two sons. One son is married to Stella. They just had a baby 2 months ago. So Max. So we're very excited about that. They live in Chicago. So yeah, good looking kid.
Now, I asked, I'll bet he takes after Grandpa.
I was going to say he doesn't.
Yeah. grandma, right? Um,
The other guy's Ryan. He's up in Minneapolis, Ryan and Hannah. So
yeah.
one guy went to Madison. He's in Chicago. The other guy's up in
So,
Minneapolis. So I miss them both. I wish they were around here, but hey, you know.
but they have seen your example of faith after losing their beautiful mom, and they have suffered just as your dad and your mom and grandma. It seems to me that the way you're walking through this is helping them build their own faith and becoming stronger, and perhaps having that deeper relationship, Dan, that you have forged.
I hope. I mean, I think I'm going to look back when I was a 20-something or a 30-something. The road's always not straight, so it has curves in it. So, like myself, we all have opportunities, but I'm trying to. They know what's important. They know where I'm at on my faith journey, and I mean, I told them when their mom passed. I said, "Hey, I go. This is a sign for all of us. This is not just mom. Mom's going to be fine. She's way ahead of the rest of us. Like, she's got the prayer thing down, and God and the relationship, and her working at St. Anthony's for 25 years. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Who knows what she was doing when it was just her and God. Yeah, I try to exemplify for my guys. They're not perfect. They know that. They're working at it. Some needs to work harder than others, and some days are harder than the other ones. But I think at the end of the day, they'll come around. I'm like a lot of parents. I mean, for whatever reason, maybe the kids walked away a little bit, but I think if you keep praying and you show them what it's supposed to look like, they'll understand that, hey, there is something there. Dad wasn't crazy. There is something there, and that's what I'm trying to demonstrate. And I tell them, I mean, if they'll say, hey, where were you? I was at adoration. I was at church. I was at a meeting at St. Anthony. Well, whatever it was. But I still pray for them every day. And I pray for them that they come back sooner. I'll say my road probably curved, but it was probably straighter than it was a curvier road. So, and theirs is not off the track. There's some fundamental things, and I hate to say it, going to church is it's like a greens fee. Like, if you don't show up well, I don't get anything out of it. I was like, man, what did you put into it? So that's hours it's like when you switch the thing from, hey, worship to attendance. I mean, attendance is one thing. When you sit there and you worship and you get something out of it, I think that's where the light goes on. And I think that's the part that, again, this is Dan's twist on the world is people always want something back right away just because of today's society and whatever. I don't think people sometimes know how to sit down and just rest at peace and say, hey, I'm going to worship God. There's a lot of things that he's done in my life, and now I can see him and hear him as I experience this thing. So that's what I hope they get out of what they see from me is like, hey, I think he's worshiping. He's changing the way he approaches stuff. And I'm still, I can do dumb things. We all do. So.
But you talk about the faith community. It seems that has helped you fill your cup and then given it away in service and continue to do so. And I'm sure that is a great example for all of us, whether we have lost a loved one or not. And of course, it happens to everyone. So I'm so grateful. I would like to kick it back to Homer in case he has anything, but I'll ask this one last one from this corner. Is there anything out there that we maybe haven't covered that you'd like people to know about your faith and how it might help them, again, in that journey that you referred to?
I went through a lot of stuff. I mean, I think start the conversation. I mean, you got to have a relationship. And I said it before, it's just about communication, and it's a journey. You can kind of fall off, but you can always come back. And there's always something to pray for or ask God for. but you can also, you need to be thankful for it. And I think, have your eyes and ears open, and look for people that are reaching out to you at times. People, I believe there's no coincidence. So when things do happen, they happen for a reason. Be open to the invites, or when people say stuff to you. Like, I'm more open now to say something about God than I probably would have been before. So I guess be open to God. I think if you can answer the question and say, you know what, I think I'm going to be open to God, there's something in there. There is something, it's in there. So if that's the first question you can ask yourself is, hey, am I open to receiving God? You've got a starting point. And that means you probably had something before. So that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you. Homer?
Well, Dan, if I see you again, I'm going to say, I remember the line. There's always something to pray for.
Yeah,
I tell Tommy, I get a t-shirt. Yours would be that. There's always something to pray for. And this one's greedy, but I'm asking you, of all your life, the moment in which you, when thinking, felt the closest to God.
Oh my gosh. Closest to God. Probably right before my wife passed. I mean, that night, I could sit there and recount the hours, but I just kind of watched how she probably prayed till probably 2:00 in the morning. She died at 6:00 in the morning. And yeah, I mean, and then the priest came in the next day and we had hospice at home. And he said to me, he goes, she died a peaceful death. He goes, she went to heaven. That's over that night span. I was like, wow, there's a God. I mean, people ask me now, they're like, what's your goal? Like, I want to get to heaven. That's my goal. And I think it resonated with that night when I was like, hey, what I saw her do, there's a God. I mean, it all resonated. Her 5-year journey resonated that night. Hospice lasted 4 days. But that night, it kind of came all to fruition that, hey, there's a God. She's going to be in a good place. She's going to be looking down on all of us, and she's going to help us. And you know what? She's definitely helped us.
Don't even tell me you're thinking of another question, Tommy. No, there's no way. There's no way. You're not going to add to that. You can't.
Just one. What is your wife's first?
Jane.
Because Jane, we've gotten to know Jane, and she must be, well, of course, she's a saint now. I cannot watch from maybe the euchre seats that eternal hug in heaven that you will have with your beautiful bride, Jane. So, Dan, on behalf of Homer, we're just so very grateful. Dan McLaughlin has been our guest on My Faith with Homer and Pip, produced by Brett Young. You and the Holy Spirit did knock it out of the park. And again, as I indicated, Homer, say it, this will be posted in a couple of weeks. It'll be there for all time, and you will continue to witness. So thank you, sir. God, you're a great brother in Christ, and I love
all
you.
Right, I appreciate it. I have to tell you, when I told Molly about this, she's like, Dan, you got to do it. She goes, I did it. You can do it.
She didn't add a dog. You're the first one.
No, she didn't add the dog. I can get, now he's laying quiet. I appreciate it. So
back at you. God bless you. Hey, Homer, thank you. Love you, and thanks to our producer Brett.
Nice meeting you, Homer. Have a good time out at the wedding. All right. See you tomorrow.
God bless everyone. See you next time.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Bye. You bet.